at your customer account number. We can use a validation check here, and this will help us achieve accuracy. It ensures that any information entered is checked against the master file information. This will also help us with authorization and occurrence, in that only debtors accounts that exist will be validated. So sales can't be made to unauthorized customers. In other words, if they're not on the debtors master file, no invoice can be captured for them. Or you could have a drop-down menu, which allows the user to pick the customer's account number off the debtor's master file rather than enter the information itself. And once the account number has been selected, the system will automatically enter the customer's name into the next field. So it would be system-generated information. And that way, simply by filling in the customer account number, the customer's account name will pop up automatically. It will be auto-filled, system-generated, whatever you want to call it. And that will help us with the accuracy of information. And behind the scenes, it means that if that customer account number is not on that drop-down menu, it's not a debtor, which means you shouldn't be making an invoice for them. Your authorization, your data approval check, whatever you want to call it, it's used to verify inputted information against master file information or other system information. So the system will check the current balance on the debtor's account before allowing the sales clerk to process the invoice. A debtor, for example, has a credit limit of 100,000. The sales clerk wants to create an invoice for the debtor. He selects the debtor's code. So there's your little code, Bob21. The system checks the code against the master file, validates that there is a debtor's account for this customer. That's check number 1. So the system's happy. Number 2, the system checks the current balance on the account against the credit limit. The current debtor's balance is 102,000. The credit limit is 100,000. Therefore, the system notifies the sales clerk no invoice should be processed for this debtor as they are already over the credit limit. So a little warning message will pop up on the screen that says either management needs to override this, so management may be able to override the warning and process the information anyway. The sales clerk can request the debtor to make a payment on their account before the sale is processed, or they can give the debtor the option to request a credit limit increase, and once the increase has gone through, then the invoice can be created. So that would be an authorization check or a data approval check, making sure that the information put in matches the information on the database, the master file, before allowing the system to go any further. And you can see that would help with the validation or the validity of that information. Was this needed in a manual environment? If a sales clerk wanted to make a sale to a customer on account, they would have to check whether that customer did have an account by inspecting the customer or debtors list manually. This list would have to be reprinted or rewritten every time a new account was created, because obviously it would then be outdated. Thus, they would perform a manual validation check. This was to ensure that no sales were made to people who don't have an account, obviously, unless they pay cash up front. So again, we can still have validation checks, but they would need to be done manually. The intention of the control is the same, it's just achieved differently in a computerized environment. Your debtors master file, let's talk a little bit more about that. The combination of good debtors master file controls and this invoice control increases fair presentation of both sales and debtors. So what I'm trying to get to here is that these two work together. If you have decent input controls and you've got good controls around your master file, obviously your information has a higher chance of being accurate. Your master file controls, you should only create debtors accounts with authorized master file amendment forms, which ensures that no sales can be made to fictitious debtors. The master file amendment form must be supported by a reviewed credits application form, which ensures that only customers who are able to pay their accounts are given credit and put on the debtor's master file. When a debtor falls behind in payment or is above their credit limit, put a hold on their account in the master file. When the sales clerk picks that debtor from the drop-down menu, a warning message should pop up indicating their account is behind and no sale should be made, which will ensure no further sales can be made to the debtors who aren't paying their accounts, increasing the recoverability of debtors. So I'm trying to indicate that the integration between controls in your debtors master file and your input controls are definitely important here, and they work very well together. Taking a look at your delivery address, this will be system generated. Once the Customer account number has been filled in. This will be pulled up. It's an autofill field, or whether you want to call it system generated or autofill, doesn't matter. Once the user selects the customer account from the drop-down list, the customer name and delivery address will be automatically completed using the information on the debtor's master file. This is going to help us achieve accuracy because the transaction details are more likely to be correct if it's pulled from the master file rather than having the user complete it by themselves. Authorization and occurrence is achieved because the validity of the sale depends on the risks and rewards of ownership passing to the buyer. If the seller delivers goods to the wrong place, then there's no valid sale. Thus, the user should not be able to edit the delivery address. Numerous frauds have been perpetrated this way. The sales invoice is valid, so they've managed, they can't get around all our other master file controls and the other application controls, so we create a valid sale to a valid person, but the sales clerk enters a fake delivery address. Thus, the thieves get the goods, and the valid debtor gets the invoice, but obviously he's not going to pay because he never received the goods. Was this needed in a manual environment? There we've got a little manual invoice. The same problem with valid delivery addresses applies in a manual environment, but the only way to ensure the delivery addresses are all correct would be for management to review the invoice or delivery note before the goods are reviewed. Thus, a manual validation check would be needed. Intention of control is the same, it's just achieved differently. Let's take a look at the controls around our inventory code. This would have or could have an alphanumeric check in the field. This would help with accuracy. The format of the code has 3 letters and 3 numbers. If someone enters 4 letters, it will automatically be rejected. You could also have drop-down menus, and this would help achieve accuracy. Along with good controls for the inventory master files, this will ensure that the clerk can't sell the wrong inventory. You could also have a field size check, which helps with accuracy. The code is 6 digits. Anything inputted that is shorter or longer than 6 digits will automatically be rejected. So these are all ways of increasing the accuracy of information being put in the system. You could use a combination of these controls or just one of them, depending on the level of importance of the information. Your alphanumeric check, the system will evaluate the accuracy of the information inputted based on whether the field should have only letters, only numbers, or a specific combination of the above. Example, a telephone number shouldn't have letters in it, so the system will automatically reject any information that is not a number. Example, your cell number, 082.123.123.4. The system will only see numbers, therefore it accepts. Your cell number 082.12b.12b.4, in other words, the person has mistakenly put a B instead of a 3, means the system sees letters and will automatically get rid of them. It will automatically reject the information. Note, the system doesn't validate the information, okay? i.e. it doesn't verify that the telephone number is correct. It will accept any 10-digit number that doesn't have any letters in there. The control just increases the chances that the number will be accurate. So understand that when we do these alphanumeric checks, field size checks, etc., an alphanumeric check doesn't prove that the information is right. It just means that it's not wrong in that particular way, if that makes any sense. Was this needed in a manual environment? We've got we've got a little form there looking for information. A form requiring a telephone number still needs accurate information. The only way to verify accuracy is to check the number personally or manually to ensure the person completing the form hasn't put a letter in there by mistake. Thus, a manual validation check would have been needed. Intention is the same. It's achieved differently in a computerized environment. Let's take a look at your drop-down menus again. Using drop-down menus for the inventory code accesses the inventory master file, which increases the accuracy of the goods sold. So we've got a little item there. There's all our inventory list. Each stock item is allocated a code, which when selected will pull up all the details of that inventory item. Was it needed in a manual environment? When creating a sales invoice, the sales clerk needs to use the correct description and identify the right stock items in order to ensure an accurate sale. So an inventory list would be needed to check against to ensure that the item on the document is correct. Thus, again, we would need a manual validation check. Again, control, the intention is the same, it's just achieved differently in a manual environment. Field size checks. The system will assess the accuracy of the information based on the size of the field. It can be used for any information that has a predefined size, i.e. it won't work for names or descriptions. Codes, telephone numbers, document reference numbers, amounts, etc. can utilize this type of control. Example, a cell phone number has 10 digits. Field size check will reject any number entered that has only 8 digits. Here's an example, 082.123.123.4. It's correct because the system sees 10 digits. Cell number 082.123.123. The system only sees 9 digits, thus it sees the information as incorrect. It rejects it. Note, the system doesn't validate the information. It doesn't verify that the number is correct. It will accept any 10-digit number. It just increases the chances that the number will be accurate. Needed in a manual environment. Again, a little excerpt from a form. When requesting someone to complete a form requiring an ID number, in order to increase the accuracy of the number inputted, the field is split into 13 blocks, since there are 13 digits in an ID number. If the person completes the field and has a block left open or runs short of a block, they know immediately that they've made a mistake. So it increases the chances of accurate information. Again, I want to draw your attention to the form design, the screen formats or the form design. You can see that someone has put thought into how to structure this to make sure that they get the information in a way that they need to see it. Someone had to be thinking about this. Note, this doesn't mean that the ID number will be correct, but there's less likelihood of the person making a mistake, thus increasing but not perfecting accuracy. Again, intention is the same, it's just achieved differently. And that is our alphanumeric check, our field size check, and talking about your drop-down menus. Again, this is an indication of the types of application controls there are and what they look like. You need to consider all the different types of areas that it would be useful for, that you could use it. The description, system generated, auto-filled. The accuracy will be assisted here. It will be automatically filled in by the system once the inventory code has been selected. The description will be taken from the inventory master file. Thus, the more controls that surround the updating and creation of the stock items on the inventory master file, the more accurate the description will be. This would have been filled in manually by the sales clerk in a manual environment. Thus, there's more chance of errors. A manager would have had to review this manually to ensure accuracy. Your quantity. This could have an alphanumeric check, which would ensure that only numbers are entered into this field. It could have a drop-down menu, which would limit the number to those on a list, therefore there would be less chance of an error. It could have a range check, which would help us with accuracy because it would ensure that an unreasonable number isn't entered. It could have a field size check, which ensures that no unreasonable number is entered. And it could have a sign check, which would ensure that a negative number isn't inputted. So you can see we've got a variety of application controls, and all of them are intended to help us achieve accuracy. Your drop-down menus here, instead of allowing the user to enter a number, they select one from the list, your volume in terms of your numbers. This will ensure that no letters can be entered instead of numbers. So your quantity is 10 or your quantity is B0. Obviously, we don't want to accept. Your sign check, numbers may be positive or negative. The system can be programmed to check the sign of the number inputted. Quantity is 12, the system accepts because the quantity is positive. Quantity negative 12, system rejects as the quantity is a negative number. You can't sell negative stock. This application control can be used for any field that needs numbers or amounts inputted. By changing the sign of the number, users could manipulate figures. For example, negative purchases would increase the profits. Using a drop-down menu for the figures would also ensure that the sign can't be manipulated. If you have to pick it off of a list, you can't change the sign. In a manual environment, this would need manual review. I think you're picking up the trend here in terms of the difference between a manual environment and your computerized environment. That would be your sign check. Range check. A little tricky. The range check, the system will not accept any amount outside a predefined range. Example, an online competition requires the age of the entrant to be between 18 and 25. With the range check, the system will not accept an entry from anyone whose age falls outside this range, thus range 18 to 25. If the age inputted is 19, the system will accept since the age falls within the range. If the age is put in as 28, it's rejected since the age falls outside the range. This programmed application control can be used anywhere where information should be inputted in a number format and should be between one amount and another: price, quantity, discounts, document numbers, etc. Was this needed in a manual environment? Obviously, accuracy is also an issue. Management may want to ensure that a number falls within a range. In a manual environment, creating different options with checkboxes may achieve this. You can see our little categories there: 20 and under, 20 to 21, etc., etc. Form design, again, is an important component of the system development, even in a manual environment. Whoever designs the form needs to think about how to ensure they get the information they needed. Again, I'm trying to hone in on the fact that in a lot of cases, these controls are designed to achieve the same thing. They just look different. Your field size check, again, may want to ensure that the clerks don't enter unreasonable amounts into the system. Car dealership doesn't sell large quantities of cars per invoice. Thus, a field size check could ensure that no finger errors are made by clumsy clerks by limiting the field size to 2 digits. This would prevent any invoice, for example, for over 99 cars from being generated. So 15 cars would be accepted since the number has 2 digits, but 102 won't be accepted because the number has 3 digits. So a field size check could be entered or could be used in the quantity column as well, or these fields as well.